When Formula One's 2022 technical regulations were first revealed, the cars were so tightly regulated under such prescriptive rules that there were fears they would all look the same. Yet there is more variety in the shape of the cars heading into the new season than we've seen for years, and sidepods are where we are seeing the most profound differences in terms of both size and shape. It's something of a surprise, given the fears of identikit F1 cars have been talked about for so long. When F1 and the FIA revealed their new rules package in Austin back in 2019, they even issued several car concept sketches in an attempt to prove that there was room for variety. But the range of designs among the 2022 F1 cars is far broader than those illustrations. So what are the main differences in the sidepod concept across the teams? Why are we seeing so much variety, and will everyone simply gravitate towards the most successful design as the season goes on anyway? Sidepod design in F1 in 2022 can be broadly described as a spectrum. This ranges from the slimline designs of Mercedes and Williams up to the much wider concepts used by Ferrari and Aston Martin. Everyone else pretty much slots in between them. With the help of analysis done for the race by both our technical expert Gary Anderson and illustrator Rosario Juliana, we can run through the concepts used by the big teams and the basic reasons for them. This isn't about trying to analyse every small detail, but to look at the big picture to understand what they're attempting to do. We'll start with Ferrari, which has the chunkiest of the sidepod designs. You might assume it's exclusively for packaging reasons, especially as Ferrari customer teams Haas and Alfa Romeo are not among the teams with the narrowest sidepods, but there is space under the skin of the Ferrari in the sidepods, so this is all about aerodynamics. You can think of the Ferrari sidepod design as almost keeping the two parts of the sidepod separate. On top, there is a kind of shallow basin effect where you can see the cooling louvres. This appears to be designed to direct the airflow to the beam wing. There is no attempt to connect up the airflow on top of the sidepod, with that at the base of the sidepod and on the floor via downwash. Lower down, it has what Gary Anderson has described as a very bluff sidepod undercut, producing some outwash to help the performance of the front corner of the underfloor. Further back, the edge of the floor has a slightly curved outer edge to help the vortex generation to seal the underfloor. The rest of the sidepod itself is all about channeling the airflow at as high a speed as possible to the Coke bottle area, then out of the back of the car across the top of the diffuser. Now let's take a look at the Mercedes, which has a dramatically reduced sidepod volume compared to the Ferrari. In fact, this was the case even before Mercedes introduced its ultra-narrow sidepods in the Bahrain test. It has cut the sidepod back at the front even more, to the point where the upper side impact protection cone is housed in its own aero-profiled shroud, providing a little downwash that also acts as the main support for the wing mirrors. For the sidepod itself, it's all about minimising the width, with a narrow, tall radiator inlet. But the airflow does still have to work its way round the sidepod, which is actually wider than it looks when viewed from above because it tapers out as it heads down towards the floor. But the objective is to create the minimum disturbance to the airflow while still serving the cooling requirements of the car and ensuring that the floor works as hoped. As usual, further back the airflow is fed into the Coke bottle and then exits over the top of the diffuser. The sidepod shape also creates something of a downwash effect, allowing airflow going across the top surface to be fed into the Coke bottle. Williams has taken a similar approach to Mercedes, but McLaren has opted for a slightly less aggressive attitude. It also has a pronounced undercut, but has not slimmed down the sidepods as decisively. As for Aston Martin, it has gone a completely different way, with chunky sidepods at the top, then a lengthy undercut, creating what at first glance almost looks like a twin floor effect. Red Bull's design lies somewhere in between. It has an aggressive undercut, one that was extended with the upgrade introduced on the final day of the Bahrain test. That effect is exaggerated by the shelf it has created forward of the radiator inlet before the sidepod proper begins. Also included in that package was a downwash channel. We took a close look at the Red Bull design in a video released on the last day in Bahrain. AlphaTauri, which also uses the Red Bull badged Honda engine, has a similar but less extreme approach with an aggressive undercut at the front of the sidepods. Alpine has a pronounced undercut with the front part of its sidepods a wide, flat section before the downwash ramp directs the airflow towards the Coke bottle area. All of these designs are ultimately trying to achieve the same aims, maximising the downforce produced by the car, minimising the drag, and working with the floor to seal the underfloor.
Have you joined the fastest growing fantasy motorsports app yet? On Grid Rival, you can join leagues with your friends and manage your own fantasy team on what race fans are calling hands down the best fantasy motorsport app out there. F1 and MotoGP leagues are now live for the 2022 season, and we have our own league for the race, which you can now join at the link in the description. Joining a league on Grid Rival will make every race more exciting, more engaging, and of course more competitive. Or you can create your own league and invite your friends. Build your winning team and see who comes out on top. It's easy to build your team using the tools and advice from the community too. Make sure you download Grid Rival now to your iPhone or Android smartphone and make your account in time for the 2022 season. Grid Rival is an unofficial application and not associated with Formula 1, MotoGP or any of their athletes.
New regulations make for variety. With a clean sheet of paper design, every team has hit upon an aero philosophy that works for them. All 10 teams have designed their cars without being able to take a look at what their rivals are up to, so while some customer teams are steered in a certain direction by parts they receive from a technical partner, it is all their own work. But even so, there has been widespread surprise about just how different the 10 cars look, with the sidepods one of the most visually obvious points of difference. However, when the rules were written, the sidepods were an area where greater design freedom was allowed. This is because the aerodynamic wake of the car is not dramatically affected by the sidepod shape. The design of the sidepods is driven by two main factors. First, the internal architecture of the car and the power unit. The former is dictated by the team, where you place the radiators, etc. The latter by the engine supplier. The sidepods clothe this, while the packaging itself is also partly dictated by how you would like to shape your sidepods. This is because the second factor is aerodynamic. The basic aim is to get the airflow to the Coke bottle area and out over the top of the diffuser with as high a speed as possible. While doing this, there's also the desire to ensure the underfloor is sealed effectively. Everything is connected on an F1 car, and the sidepod shape and floor designs are interconnected, meaning developments of the floor and sidepods will go hand in hand. Although the various regulatory boxes and rules governing bodywork surfaces don't leave much room for manoeuvre, the 10 F1 teams have managed to come up with all kinds of different solutions. As the saying goes, there is more than one way to skin a cat, so teams have hit upon a wide variety of ways to achieve their objectives, hence the variety. When new Formula 1 regulations are introduced, the usual trend is for the initial cars to offer a wide variety of interpretations. Over time, these then converge either to one concept that is the best solution, or perhaps a couple of different philosophies. It's widely expected that this will happen with the sidepods of this new generation of cars, and we will likely see some evolution in that direction over the course of 2022. But it's not as simple as reshaping your sidepods to whatever appears to be the most successful concept. Firstly, as we've already discussed, there's the question of packaging in terms of both power unit and the car's architecture. Secondly, as prescriptive as the regulations are, every team has their own aero concept, and what works for the sidepods, or any other aero surface for that matter, on one car doesn't necessarily work for another. And most alternatives will already have been evaluated at least in CFD, or perhaps even in the wind tunnel. Not that teams aren't closely looking at each other. Every team has photographers feeding through images for analysis, and any ideas that haven't been considered will be. But although the tightness of the regulations means it's easier to copy ideas given everyone is working towards pretty much the same overall car concept, it doesn't mean convergence will happen quickly. Many of the differences of sidepods will therefore be carried through to the end of the season. But what will be revealing is how much convergence there will be when next year's cars break cover. The power units are frozen this year, so there's little capacity for change there, but every team will revise their car architecture based on what they've learned in 2022. And remember, the cost cap also means that the big teams must be careful about how they strategise their upgrade spending during the year, so some changes might just have to be put off until next year's car. We could also see some more extreme interpretations as teams battle to find new areas to exploit aerodynamically, given the expected difficulty of finding new performance differentiators. So while we can expect some convergence, we might also see ever more aggressive approaches to sidepod design as teams try to squeeze every last tenth of a second from the rules. But for now, it's all about developing the concepts they've opted for in 2022. The differences won't vanish this year, but we can expect significant change to all aspects of the cars as the season goes on, including the sidepods.